Donald Trump, he trashes the government and then lets them borrow 100 million, over 100 million. Now Donald Trump is sitting on over 100 million in bonds right now, and he's literally telling the Federal Reserve, you guys better lower those interest rates. Now, why does that matter? Well, for one, it could make him a ton of money, and here's why. But before we get into why this, is such a big deal, or maybe it's not, let's take a minute first to understand what bonds actually are. Because trust me, if you don't understand bonds, you don't understand money. Now, what is a bond? At its core, guys, a bond is basically a debt. Now, there are borrowers, there are issuers. The issuer here could be, a government, a city, a state, or even a company. So when an issuer sells a bond, they're basically saying, hey guys, if you lend us this money, we'll pay you a fixed interest rate during the life of the bond. Now, at the end here, we'll give back the principal, also called the face value. So it's basically an IOU. Your friend tells you, hey, let me borrow some money, I'll pay you a fixed interest rate, and then at the end of the term here, I'll pay you everything back in one lump sum. Now, why would investors buy bonds? Well, there's a few reasons, guys. Bonds provide a predictable income stream, right? They pay interest. Now, this could be regularly, usually every 6 months. And then, obviously, if you hold the bond to maturity, you're going to get your principal back. It's a way to invest generally, in a more stable way than like stocks or crypto. Now, there are a few main types of bonds, okay? There's corporate bonds. These are issued by companies. They could be public or private companies like your Amazon, your Google. Companies sell these bonds to raise money. For example, guys, if, they're looking to expand operations or maybe develop a new product, or they're looking to buy a company that's struggling, they'll issue these bonds in order to raise that money. Next, there's municipal bonds, right? These are issued by your states, your cities, or counties. And these are issued to fund public projects like roads, bridges, schools, or even public transportation. Now, investors often do like these because the interest here on these type of bonds can be tax-free. Who wants to pay taxes, right? And then we have U.S. Treasury bonds. These are issued by the federal government. These are long-term debt securities, right? They usually are issued to fund government spending, manage, the national debt, or even influence the economy. Big market, okay, when it comes to government bonds. So basically, whether it's a city, it's a building, a school, a company launching a new product, or the government trying to manage the budget, bonds are a way for issuers to borrow that money from the public, right? And it's a way for investors to earn a steady, cash flow. Who doesn't like cash flow, right? And a predictable return, something you could actually measure, right? My throat's sore. Pause. So now that you get what a bond is, here is where things get interesting. Since taking office in January, Donald Trump, a.k.a. the 45th president, a.k.a. the deal maker, he's gone on what you might call a 100 million bond buying spree. Now, he's invested in debt issued by big companies and municipal governments, companies like Home Depot, T-Mobile, United Healthcare, and even Meta, formerly known as Facebook. But here's the thing, guys. Unlike some past presidents, I think Trump doesn't put his investments into like a blind trust or anything. I don't think there's anyone that manages it besides like him and his family or his kids. Not that matters, just a quick fact. Now, why does this matter? Well, guys, if bond prices usually go up when interest rates fall. So if interest rates do drop, those bonds that he bought will probably increase in value. Okay, basically, it's possible Trump could profit directly from lower rates, which makes his public push, to have the Feds and Jerome Powell cut rates a little funny. He's been pressing the Federal Reserve for some time now to lower those interest rates, even though Jerome Powell here has held rates pretty steady for some time now, and which makes sense. Inflation is still high, unemployment is a concern, and lowering rates too soon would obviously risk more inflation, or even stagflation, which honestly I think we are already in that period. It's basically the tricky combo of like slow growth, high inflation, and then unemployment here can be a concern, obviously. So why might Trump still be pushing for cuts? Well, for one, obviously it could be part of that financial strategy, right? It could be a way to position himself to profit if those rates do fall. Or it could be I would say another thing here, it could be strategic in terms of lowering interest rates could stimulate stimulate economic activity, and then he could claim probably that he created a strong economy. He's definitely known to do that. Lower interest rates does create a strong economy, but inflation will probably run rampant. Now, meanwhile, the Fed has to obviously think about the bigger picture here, right? They got to consider the long-term effects of their policies, right? Because lowering rates too soon can, obviously cause inflation to rise, and if that was to happen, it would be very difficult to keep it under control. We'd be in a period of hyperinflation, and that would be terrible. Like, imagine if the dollar was worthless. It's like stacking cash in a pile, and then someone lights it on fire while you're looking away. Or imagine traveling to these places, like Thailand, or where these places not in the U.S. that we all like to visit, and your money just doesn't go nowhere. That's what runaway inflation feels like, right? And we could end up like Venezuela here. In summary, while Trump's bonds investments might suggest a personal financial incentive here for rate cuts, I really like the Fed's cautious approach. I think Powell does a great job, and his concern for the greater economic situation and the stability of it is pretty cool. But keeping inflation in check and stabilizing the economy and making sure that any rate cuts that happen don't backfire is essential. So even if the president here, Trump, does push for it, the Fed's approach to they might say things like not so fast, and that tension between them, that political pressure, is what makes this story interesting, right? Now, before we wrap up, guys, I think the important thing here to take from this video is why bonds really matter. I think everyone here should understand bonds, at least to some degree, right? Because if you don't understand money, if you don't understand bonds, you don't understand money. Again, bonds are essentially loans, right, from companies, cities, governments, and they borrow the money here from investors, and they're willing to pay them interest over time, right, in order to receive that capital, right? Now, without bonds, we might not have some schools, or highways might not be the way they are. Now, here's the kicker. Sheesh. The bond market's big, right? It's massive. It's bigger than the U.S. stock market. Most people know about stocks, but when it comes to bonds, it's a $1 trillion industry, and It's much bigger than the U.S. stock market, and that is the biggest market in the world. Now, bonds, again, they do affect interest rates, and they influence everything from your mortgage to the price of groceries, maybe to your job prospects, right? So next time you hear anything about interest rates, inflation, or even what Donald Trump here is doing with bonds, or maybe his tweets or whatever it might be at Powell, it's not just politics, guys. It's real money, and it's a cause for concern, right? And bonds are at the center of it all, right? They run the show. So if you made it to the end of this video, guys, I do appreciate you. It's been some time, but I'm glad to be back. Been traveling for some time now. I think I've been traveling nonstop for like 2 years. I got to see a lot of the financial concepts I learned in school. I have pretty much slipped, but that's one reason why I like doing this, is because I get to like brush up on a lot of things I've learned and a topic that interests me. So being able to do some research and then put out videos it's pretty cool, because it keeps it stuck in my brain, and then it's a way to teach people, but also teach myself and ensure that it does not leave me, right? Anyways, if you made it to the end of this video, guys, I do appreciate you. Hit that follow, hit the like button, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.